Hello and welcome to In Conversation with Rashmi. Today in conversation is my guest Emily O'Brien, who is an entrepreneur and founder of Comeback Snacks. It's a specialty popcorn company, and she started this after being sentenced to a 4-year jail term that stemmed from her battle with addiction. And Emily set out on a mission to get clean, transform herself, and make her time in jail as meaningful as possible. So, to talk about her journey, joining me now is Emily O'Brien. Thank you so much, Emily, for being a part of this conversation. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
You actually got me in my house today. Normally I'm out and about, and this is good because I'm at home.
What a university degree, you've had great grades, you were a loving child. How did you end up in prison?
It really started with me being very introverted and being very tomboyish at a young age, and so I didn't have like a lot of friends. And like I had a couple, like don't get me wrong, I definitely had friends, but I didn't like have like those groups of girlfriends that like a lot of people had. And I was pretty quiet. I spent a lot of my time at the library. And then when I got to high school, I started getting all this attention from guys, and I got curious, but I didn't know how to talk to them, and I didn't really know how to talk to new people either. And so I started alcohol, and then it turned into drugs because I guess I had a thing for bad boys back then. And that kind of created a relationship with my family. But I always pulled my socks up when I had to. After driving them absolutely nuts and almost getting kicked out of the house, I graduated with honors from high school, and I always worked. Like I loved being able to afford things myself and pay for my stuff. And so having additional income or just having my own income was pretty like intrinsic in me, like since a very young age. And so I worked and went to university again. Like in university, drinking was pretty ingrained in the culture there. So, and I was at that point like a party girl. I loved it. I had gone from being a library lover to like a socialite. So the drinking kind of continued, but also so did the grades, so did the jobs. By third year, I was paying my entire tuition myself because my parents had like what's that called? Like so the first year they paid for the entire tuition, then each year they took away something that they'd pay for so that we could learn to be more responsible. And so by my third year, I actually paid for it all myself because I got a really good job after second year, made a lot of money, and that was at a golf course. And that's when I kind of learned that my skills were with people, and I was really good at marketing. And so from all these jobs that I had, I learned what skills I had. And then once I graduated university, I lived in Indonesia for a bit, which I absolutely loved. I always continued to drink though. I never really cut it out of my life because I was just so used to it. And I didn't really have anything bad happen to me. Like other than the fact that I was shy and, definitely got taken advantage of a couple of times when I was drunk by guys, but like, I'm not blaming that. Like, you know what I mean? Just those things happen. Doesn't make it right, but I didn't have any like very, very traumatizing experiences. And so once I graduated school, moved, and then I moved back to Toronto, or I moved to Toronto because I wanted to be, I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and because I worked a lot of jobs, but I also found that I got tired of them really quickly, and I didn't think they moved fast enough. Like I always had ideas that I could never implement. And I always saw like things that could be improved in society, but that I was always working for someone else, so I couldn't really do it. And my first business kind of took off, and the drinking, and it actually got a lot worse in Toronto because I did go through something really, really hard, and that was when my family split up. And when someone that already engages in substance use and you put them through something difficult, the substance use increases. At least it did for. I was very good at running away from that until it landed me on a trip with this guy I was dating, and lo and behold,
I'm just going to ask here, Emily, when you knew things were going out of hand, did you try and seek help? Did you reach out? for all the substance abuse and drinking and all that? Like, was there a point before you met this guy where you thought maybe I should slow down?
There definitely was, but at the same time, it was also part of my work. Like I was really good at getting the deals. I was a marketing genius. Like I would go out and it was like my persona kind of grew my business for me. And the lie that I told myself was that I needed alcohol was definitely a lie.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like cocaine was like not in Toronto. Like cocaine it's very, very common. Especially in business and, you know, these fast life kind of deals. And so problem until I went through the difficult time. And then that's when I became my old self again. I became very introverted again.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't really like leaving my apartment, and I would drink at home alone. But still, I was like, as a female, I was just kind of shy about it. And then there was also a shame associated with being sad about things that go on in your family when you're over a certain age. Like people are like, oh, aren't you old enough? You shouldn't be sad about that. So I kept it inside because I was, you know, being told that you can't be sad about those things because you're an adult. And so that's kind of what also contributed to it. And, you know, I never had like the intention of being a criminal and be profiting off crime. Like that was not my life. And I liked creating things, and I really liked to travel. Like I traveled all around the world in between, like not all around the world, but like enough to know that I really enjoyed it. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I don't have that ability right now, but I guess no one ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me.
Mm-hmm. So you met this person and went on a trip with them?
Yeah, like we were casually dating for about 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of relationship is like very common in like, you know, the millennial kind of demographic, just casual dating. Sometimes you meet people and you go on trips. Like he wasn't a complete stranger. Like we definitely had a thing. It wasn't like, it was different than a lot of my other relationships because he didn't like sexualize me. Like he wasn't like a typical guy that's always like, oh, send nudes, or, you know, like just sending like raunchy stuff sometimes. And I really like liked that because he wasn't annoying like that. And so I actually felt closer to him because I thought he saw more in me than that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but clearly he saw a lot more in me, and that was to like actually use me as bait, you know, like baited me to go on this trip, and kind of took advantage of my substance use and my weakness, and tried to capitalize on it basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what happened then? How did you get caught at the border? Like, where did that?
Yeah.
How did you end up being in the prison?
Yeah, so we go on a trip, and he tells me he's like in a lot of debt, and he's actually already arranged for us to both bring back drugs, and I didn't want to do it, and I told him I was going to be really bad at it. But I was in another country, and he told me that he already told these people that I was doing it, and I didn't like want to mess with that. Like I didn't want to mess with a drug trafficking ring.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just did it so I could go home, and subsequently got arrested for it. And 2 years later, after going through a grueling court process, which was very long, put my family through a lot of pain, but you know what mattered the most was their unconditional. So I pled guilty.
I'm going to interrupt you here. What was your reaction when you were sent to prison, when you knew this is it? There's no escape here, and you know I've been arrested. So what was your reaction? What ran through your mind at that time?
At that point, I was happy that I couldn't have an escape because I was very good at escaping until then.
Mm-hmm.
I'd been very good at figuring my way out of messes, so I didn't have to deal with the consequences or just, you know, use my creativity for bad. And at this point, I like knew that I had to take accountability. It was like, it came with like a lot of denial at first because I surrounded myself with people who helped me support that, who helped me embrace that identity. But I wasn't healing from it, and I was more like backpedaling. And so once I kind of began to really notice the pain that I caused in others instead of just the harm that had been done to me, because I was trapped in this area where I was like, there was harm done to me, and you know, I shouldn't have to go to prison. Mm-hmm. But I'd actually, throughout my years of substance abuse, I'd actually put others through a lot of pain, and And now at this point, my family was there for me, but they had absolutely had it with the alcohol and the drugs. And like, that was, I knew that I loved them and I knew that they loved me. And so I knew at that point I had to just get rid of it. Like like I didn't want to lose them.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And when you were in the prison, I'm assuming it was an all-women prison.
Yep. Yep.
And so were you allowed to make friends there? Did you have people you could talk to about, what you went through? Because again, when the whole idea of prison comes into mind, it's, there are convicts, there are people who have done these big crimes and who are sent there for a reason. So were there instances where you thought, okay, you could talk to these women, you could connect with them and build some relationships with them?
Yeah, like when I got arrested and finally sentenced to prison, I knew that this couldn't have just happened to me. And the researcher in me, like the student in me came out, and I was like, I want to learn who else this is happening to, who this is happening to. And I wanted to take the story from being something that embraces victimhood to something that encourages, like not Robin Hood, but like moving forward from it instead. And so I talked to so many people in there, and I actually built a lot of empathy for people and why they do the things that they do. And I really began to understand people in prison as people that are really just like us, or people that actually are like faced to deal with so much abuse as kids. And that's why they actually end up in prison, is because they've never been raised in a healthy and loving environment. But the system treats them all like they're worthless. And if you actually want to have a strong society, you have to actually treat people like they're worth something, like they aren't their worst mistake. Because that's how you grow. That's how you build a strong economy. That's how you build a strong society. That's how you make people want to live, And so that's what I wanted to share with the world, like that all these women were in for reasons that weren't actually malicious, profit off crime. They're in there because of survival, or often mental illness or abuse.
The prison in there is where you thought about comeback snacks, and that's where it was born. So tell me about that.
Yeah. I knew I wanted to share my experience, and I knew I wanted to make a difference, because that's what really brought me joy. Even as a kid, I always loved volunteering. Even when I worked, I always volunteered because I felt like it was a great way to learn. And so I wanted to build something in prison that actually could share the stories of not just me, but like other people as well, and also create something to help advance the futures of people leaving prison, because there wasn't a lot out there. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of public scrutiny, and there's also limited avenues for employment. And so because of the one thing, and over time in there, I began to do a lot of research and figure out that 13% of Canadians actually had a criminal record. And so if as a country we're denying these people from the workforce, what does that do to our economy? What does that do to our society? What does that do to are we going to keep paying taxes into prison, and then we're going to keep paying for social programs because we're not hiring people after they come out of prison, so they just go back to being on social assistance? So that all these things came into play for why I wanted to build something. And I also wanted to create employment for myself. And that's how I started the popcorn company, because popcorn was a snack, and it brought people together. It made people laugh. It made people kind of forget where they were. And that's kind of what creates unity and resiliency and perseverance for the next step. So that's kind of where popcorn comes into all of it.
From creating that idea and building onto it from where things are at today, what's that journey been like? And now that you're out of prison, is there a stigma that still surrounds you? Or in prison, is there a stigma that is still associated with trying to get deals or trying to grow that business?
Not so much anymore, because I've proven it. I'm sure there was a lot of hesitation, and I got a lot of grief when I had this idea, and I was like, no, Like if there's a fighter in me, it's going to fight for something good. And so there definitely were a lot of doubters when I started, for sure. You know, I started with one pot, and like now we're shipping all across North America. So it just takes like a lot of perseverance. But I noticed a lot of stigma in other areas. For example, if you're a woman and you have a record and you want to get funding for your business, like it's going to be challenging. If you want to get housing, you have to fill a lot of the time. You have to fill out a record check, and so people coming out of prison don't have homes. And so how are you supposed to come out of prison and get a unit if you have to do a record check, or at least like if you tell them you've gone to prison, I think, you know, there's nothing wrong with being transparent. I think also being transparent about your mistakes is a part of justice and is part of healing. But I think for people to deny, for lands to deny people because of like being in prison, it just continues the cycle. So there's limits there. There's also limits when it comes to families. And so people go to prison and then a lot of them come out, you know, when they're 30 or 35 or sometimes older. And if you want to have a family, or if you want to like adopt a child, I don't think you can adopt a child with a record, right? So, which also like limits our economy. It limits the lives and the possibilities of where children who actually need to be loved by someone we can't do it. And then another thing, institutional barriers. So when I was doing a talk at a school, a girl came up to me just crying. Like she came up, she just hugged me and she started, you know, pre-COVID. She came up to me, she just started crying. She's like, Emily, like I got in a fight when I was like 20 and I hit someone and I shouldn't have done it, and I have an assault charge. And I want to be a nurse, but the school is not letting me be a nurse because of this charge. And I'm like, and then the COVID happened. And I'm like, what about all the people that we could use in hospitals right now? Like the care that this country needs, and you're denying people access to education. So that like really blew my mind. And so that was what really inspired me to kind of take it from more than just my own business, but also work with institutions, work with HR departments, go bigger scale, for sure.
Being in prison changed you as a person?
It's made me a lot more patient, and it's also made me a lot more grateful for I have. Like I've always like loved my family and things that, you know, I've been blessed with. But this just like took it to a whole nother level, and just seeing the inequalities that how the system basically punishes people in poverty, right? It's like it's like so for example, when I got arrested, I had to have a lawyer, right? And that was, you know, my bail was set at $50,000. A lot of people don't have that. No. So if you can't afford a lawyer, then you immediately have to go to a detention center until your legal case is resolved. And so it basically punishes people that have less, despite the fact that the charge is the same. So that was like something that I was like, oh my gosh, like I know my life would have been very different if I didn't have the family that I have, and if my family, you know, the resources that they have. So that was just something that I really had to use for this next adventure, and that's to create like a profound impact and help people who don't have it, basically.
And I know you've spoken from, you know, your past conversations as well, that having this as a second chance has, you know, given you this opportunity to prove what you really are and what you bring to the society. So do you believe in that second chance?
I believe in second chances, but I also believe that a lot of people that go to prison never even had the chance in the first place. So we have to address the inequalities first, and then we also have to be as forgiving as we are with our friends as we are with strangers. Like we're very good at having like intimate empathy, right? So if someone that we know and love does something that they mess up, like it's a lot easier for us to forgive them. But we aren't good at distant empathy. Like we don't really know what that is. Like it's easy for us to be mad at a stranger that did something that had nothing to do with us, right? So, and it's a lot easier to not forgive them. So, and we like to be ignorant. So I think just trying to actually put ourselves in other people's shoes. Like people say it all the time, but we don't actually do it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm. And that's again, I think it comes with the stigma and the acceptance too, right? Because people still, even though there's conversations that say we need to accept, we need to, and like you said, they don't really do it when time comes to do things. It's
mhm.
probably because back of their mind, they still have that stigma in their heads. So probably education would be an important part for people to understand and learn, I guess,
Mhm.
of what, people like you who have been there, seen what it is like, had the conversations. um, I'm glad that you're out there sharing your story, because I think that's important to educate people on how things are, when you are arrested and when you're staying with other people who shared their stories with you. Bringing their stories out too is quite important.
Yeah. No, 100%. I love it. And I have like a public speaking background, right? Like that's what going to having an education taught me, right? I had to do these presentations. And so using the privilege and skills that I have to do something better is like it's the most fulfilling thing ever.
Mhm.
Because like you're gonna wake up and do it all over again. And it's easy to get out of bed when you actually have something that you really want to work for.
Mhm. So what's next for Emily O'Brien?
Well, tomorrow I'm actually working on a TV show right now, so I'm a consultant for a TV show. I have a docu-series coming out with Belle in the fall.
Wow.
Working on I'm working on a storybook. Like at first I tried to write a memoir, and then I was like, oh my god, I just have so many stories. And someone's like, Emily, just make it a collection of stories about your life. And I'm like, that's so much easier. So I think I want to do that. But like, stories along the way, like
Mhm.
stories within a story, kind of. And what else am I doing? Oh, I'm a mentor for women who want to start a business who maybe have the barriers that I was talking about. It's with an organization called Rise Helps.
Yeah.
And I also have been working with a lot of families that have loved ones that are locked up and need help navigating the system, because the crime, there's like the person that gets involved, and then there's like the whole family that actually gets impacted.
Mhm.
And so that's definitely where people need help too. So I love it, and you never know what's going to happen the next day, because it's just opened up so many pathways. Like
Mhm.
I feel like I'm skiing down a hill that has just been snowed on, and I can make whatever path I want.
That's amazing. And
Yeah.
do you ever get tempted to go back or try cocaine or any of that again? Like, do you, or you've completely said, this is it, and this is my new life?
hmm I'm never going to say like I don't like cocaine, because like it's a drug and it makes you feel good, but it didn't make my life good. And so you really have to make mature decisions about where you want to go in life and what's going to be too dangerous for you. And like same with alcohol. Sure, it'd be great to have a couple tequila shots, but I can't do that. I just like it kind of ruined things for me, and I have to hold up my end of the bargain. Like a crucial component of making a comeback and fighting for everything that I'm fighting for is holding up my end of the bargain.
Mhm.
And yeah, so that's just it.
And
It's
before we wind up, what's your word for, young youth who, again, probably being the age you were at when you were tempted, and like you said, it's fresh into college, bars, dance parties are a thing. And
mhm.
so what do you have to advise to all the young youths out there who, again, starting school year is different this year, however,
Yeah, my
people
advice
are
would be,
still partying and out there. So what would you tell them?
I think like if we try to caution people from ever making mistakes, it's not going to make strong people. So we can't tell, and the second you try to tell people too much what to do, they're going to do it a lot of the time. Sometimes the best learning just comes from experience. But when it comes to the law and your relationships, be very careful about when you're with people and what they're getting you to do, because my ignorance of the law and what I was getting involved with also led to my downfall. And sometimes you don't know like who you're dating, like if they're a bad person or not, until they actually do something bad. So you can't, maybe tell your young ones, or like tell students, oh, like don't date bad boys, because some people are bad boys when you find out that they are.
Mhm.
Like, because they're very good at tricking you and manipulating you.
Mhm.
So I guess my advice would be to, when we make these mistakes and when we go too far, because as humans, we often will.
Mhm.
I'm sure some personality types don't, but if you're going to be in the entrepreneurial world or even in this world, it's like we're going to go too far sometimes. But you can't really just take accountability and responsibility.
Mhm.
But you do have to hold up your end of the bargain. Like you have to issue apologies and hold up to them. Apologies aren't just a text message. They aren't just a saying I'm sorry. They are a process, and then they take a lot of work.
Mhm.
So, but definitely don't be bringing drugs to someone else. Never break the law for a relationship that you're in, because there's someone out there that will love you who won't ask you to do that.
Mhm. On that note, thank you so much, Emily. It was an absolute pleasure chatting with you today, and you take care, and wishing you
Thank
the
you.
very best in all your new endeavors. That's amazing that you have all these projects coming on. So we look
Oh,
forward to, seeing them and watching, reading, whatever your projects
yeah,
are in the coming months, days, weeks. Good luck.
yeah.